Excessive body weight is a really common problem in cats. Studies have shown that somewhere between 40 and 60% of cats are carrying too much weight. And the really big issue is that owners usually aren't aware of that. So you think your cat's just a nice cuddly weight, in actual fact, they're carrying excess fat that could well cause them problems later in life. So I think the first question to answer is, how do you know if your cat is too fat? I suppose the first thing to understand is the benchmarks that are used. So essentially, a cat is classified as being overweight when they're between 10 and 20% heavier than the ideal. And they're classified as being obese when they're over 20% heavier than they ought to be. Now, as an owner, how can you tell? Because you just look at your cat and you're going, well, they look about this, and you don't really know. So there are systems for determining whether a cat is overweight or obese. And the simplest method is called the body condition score. And the body condition score is essentially a score out of between 1 and 5, depending on where the cat sits. And 1 being the thinnest and 5 being the heaviest. And to kind of break that down further, a cat that's scored 1 is too thin. So if you examine them, you'll feel along their back, you'll feel the bones are sticking out, you feel the side, you'll feel their ribs are very, very prominent, and overall they just look scrawny basically. That's score 1. Score 2 is the next level up, and that is lean. And what lean means is that when you look at your cat, you can't really see the bones sticking out, but when you put your hand on them, they really are very prominent and obvious. And again, when you look at the ribs, you can't actually see the ribs prominently sticking out, but when you feel the cat, you'll be able to feel the little bumps of the ribs. And so that basically means your cat is thin, or body condition score 2. So we then move to body condition score 3, which is the ideal. And what that is that when you look at your cat, you can't see any bones sticking out on the spine or the ribs. But when you pet them, you can just feel the outline of the bones. And when you pet their ribs, you can feel the ribs they're just there, but they're not like, wow, like sticking out obviously, but you can just make out the contours. So that's the ideal weight for a cat. Overweight is more complicated because then when you examine your cat, first of all, you can't see any bones, you can't see the ribs or the spine, and when you actually feel them, neither can you feel the bones. So you run your hand along their back and you can't actually feel the edges of the backbone, and you put your hand on their side and you can't actually feel the ribs. So that's overweight. And as well as that, when you look at these cats, you'll notice that their abdomen is a bit droopy underneath. There's a little bit of a pouch there. So when they walk, you can see this moving a bit sometimes underneath them. So that's 4 out of 5, and that's classified as overweight. And then we come to 5 out of 5, which is obese. And in these cats, again, it's like 4+, so you can't feel any of the bones on the spine or the ribs. But as well as that, when you look at their abdomen, it's quite prominent, and it's really sort of swinging when they're walking, and it's possibly in some cats even getting close to being on the ground. And when you look at the cat from above, it's almost like a circular shape rather than the normal sort of, tucked in, streamlined shape of a cat. So that gives you some idea about how you tell if your cat's normal or overweight or underweight. And if you're not sure about how to do this, then I would say go to your local veterinary clinic, and one of the veterinary professionals there, whether it's a nurse or a vet, they'll help you by explaining to you, where they think your cat fits in that scale. And what's very important is that they'll also weigh your cat, and the absolute weight of a cat is very important, and that's one of the real benefits of an annual checkup at your local vets, because they'll put the cat on the scales and they'll record what your cat is from year to year. And that way you can pick up, like if your cat is at the ideal weight, let's say at 2 years of age, if at 3 and 4 and 5 years of age it's creeping up, you'll know that actually they are putting on more weight than you'd realised. So the absolute weight is important. So let's say you go to your vet and you discover, actually, my cat's obese. What are you going to do about it? Because we know that obesity is linked to all sorts of problems, from diabetes mellitus to arthritis getting worse, to heart disease, to fatty liver disease. There's lots of reasons why it's not good for cats to be obese, and why obesity is linked to a shorter lifespan. So what do you do if your cat is obese? How do you deal with that situation? I suppose the obvious answer is simply that you give them less calories to eat and you give them more exercise. And it's all very well to say that. In practice, you've got your cat lying on the sofa in front of you. They don't want to exercise, and when it's food time, they want to tuck into the food big time. So how do you deal with this? Well, I suppose I would always say there's three key aspects to weight loss. And the first thing is you do have to weigh your cat regularly. Like if you're not actually weighing your cat, you can't tell whether it's getting better or worse. So if you're going on to a weight loss program, some kind with your cat, I'd always say to you, engage with your local vet clinic and take your cat into the clinic and get the cat weighed every 2 weeks. And that way you can actually monitor if you're making progress. And that is just so important, okay? The second thing I'd say is start to give your cat a measured amount of food. That means you no longer have ad-lib feeding where your cat just can have as much as they want all day long. I know a lot of people leave dried food out in their cat's bowl and they just let their cat graze when they want to graze. You can't do that anymore. You have to start to give your cat a measured amount of food. And if your cat is obese, you're probably going to find it better to use a special weight loss diet. And that's a diet that's got different nutrients, perhaps different levels of fibre. It's designed to help cats lose weight, and your local vet clinic will be able to provide you with such a diet, and indeed they'll be able to tell you how much of that measured amount of food your cat should get every day. So that's the second thing then. First, you weigh your cat regularly. Second, you start to give a measured amount of the same type of food every day so you know exactly what your cat's eating. The third thing you do is you increase your cat's level of activity. Now, again, you're saying to me, how can we increase the level of activity of that cat when she just wants to sit there doing nothing? Well, I suppose the first thing you do is you find out what motivates her, okay? So you find toys that she likes playing with. You might find a laser light, something that she enjoys, or you might find her a toy on a wand, like a feathery thing on a wand you can flick around the place. You find something that she loves doing. And you might even start to include food in her activity. If she really loves her food, you can start to leave the food up a few steps or something, so the cat actually has to climb up steps to get to their food. So that way they'll be motivated to get to the food that they like by having to do the exercise. And you know, there's lots of other ways that you can do this. Having a cat tree as part of your cat's, if you like, house furniture can be good as well. So they want to get to their nice comfy bed, they've actually got to climb up to get into their bed. So there's lots of different ways that you can do it. So really, those are the essential ways that you deal with obesity in cats. You increase their activity, you start to measure how much food they're having, and you start to weigh them regularly. And if you do that within a few months, you should be able to watch your cat's diet, watch your cat's weight coming gradually down until they reach that ideal spot with a body condition score of 3. But do work with your local vet clinic because they are the experts at doing this stuff. And the best of luck.